Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to a Shenmue Dojo video. Today's video I'm going to be looking at the whole Shenmue v YAKUZA rivalry and why, quite frankly, I think it's completely stupid. Now, I'm not here to stoke any fan base or anything of the sort. This is my view on the subject, that I think this whole rivalry between Shenmue and YAKUZA Like a Dragon is A, overblown, B, completely pointless, and C, they're different games anyway. Yes, they borrow some core mechanics. Yes, they have some elements that are similar to each other, but they are poles apart in terms of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve. So I'm hoping to sort of kill the whole rivalry thing and also go over a little bit of why they're very, very different. Now, if you want a deep dive into this sort of topic context, James and I did a podcast, I think a couple of years ago, talking about sales, talking about the games, the development, the real nitty-gritty stuff around both series. So go and check that out if you want to go and sort of really dive into the detail around this. But you constantly see this argument flare up over on social media. I see it in the YouTube comments for these videos all the time. And it's A, frustrating, and B, I just think, what's the point? Like, why? So let's go all the way back now. So we're talking sort of 2002, 2003. YAKUZA sort of makes its original sort of debut on the PS2. I found the series by asking on the Dojo forums back in the day, is anything similar to Shenmue out there in terms of those sorts of games? And I was put in the direction of the YAKUZA series. Now, if I'd have gone in there thinking this is going to be exactly like Shenmue, I would have been very disappointed. But what I got was a very different experience, and an experience that stood well on its own 2 feet, and while borrowed some elements of Shenmue, clearly had its own sort of path, direction that it wanted to go in, and I'm glad it has done because it's given us 2 fantastic series. But there's a bit of a mix of this as well. So some Shenmue fans see YAKUZA Like a Dragon as replacing Shenmue, having sort of borrowed from that hard work that Shenmue laid with the original games back in the day, and I get that argument, I can get it. And Nagoshi, who worked on YAKUZA and essentially started this whole franchise up, worked on Shenmue as well, and cites it regularly as being an inspiration for starting the YAKUZA series and also for where it went later on. Others see, and this is a very simplistic view, but it's out there a lot, that YAKUZA Like a Dragon is just Shenmue but better, which I think is such a narrow-minded argument considering what both games try to do in their own respective strengths and weaknesses. I really think that's just a very simplistic way of looking at what are 2 very complex but very different games as well. There is then, I think, an undercurrent, and I completely admit this from the Shenmue community perspective, that Shenmue was essentially abandoned by Sega, and they carried on pushing YAKUZA Like a Dragon series despite its own initial troubles, especially in the West. Bear in mind that going years and years back now, YAKUZA 1 and 2 didn't sell particularly well in the West, 3 didn't either, 4 again struggled, and it took years for 5 to come west, and it took a campaign very similar to the hashtag give you Shenmue license, all those sorts of things, save Shenmue, all that sort of stuff. It very much took a similar effort from the YAKUZA community to come over, so actually we share a similar trait there. But what Sega did do, certainly in Japan, was keep pushing it, and they eventually found a way with YAKUZA 0 to break that mass market, and it's flown ever since. And I'm glad it has. I'm really, really glad it has. This is somebody who owns every mainline YAKUZA Like a Dragon title and have played them all to death. They are fantastic games. I also think that newer fans of the YAKUZA Like a Dragon series, and I appreciate I'm generalising here, will jump on the whole Shenmue shit, just play YAKUZA thing, without really having played Shenmue. Now, obviously, it's up to them whether they want to play it or not, and I can understand that it might be difficult for some people having played the Like a Dragon series, especially in the modern iterations now, to then go on and play Shenmue, which is obviously set in 1990, made in 1999, set in 1986 rather, and you've got those issues around it as well. But what they offer are 2 very completely different experiences. Now, I'm going to come on to why this is just stupid. And it is stupid. Now, I've likened these games to cousins over the years. They borrow some of the same DNA, some of the same core mechanics, but the vibes are essentially very, very different. Now, the core is that it's a third person walking, running around the world, completing quests, completing side quests, talking to NPCs, fighting people, while progressing through a story of some description. Now, the presentation of these games feels very, very different, But when you come into the story elements themselves, obviously Shenmue has this one long continuing story where you meet lots of characters and they all participate in Ryo's journey and Ryo's growth as things go forward. Obviously, we're 3 games in now. Whereas Yakuza Like a Dragon, obviously all the games do link. There is links and sort of callbacks to the previous games, but they're all standalone entries within their own right. So that does mean to a point that people can probably get into those games much easier than coming through into a Shenmue game, 2, 3 games in at this point, and going, what's going on? How have I got to where we are now? They don't do that so much, the Like a Dragon games. They're all very much, while they do link, have their own little entries in there as well, and it probably makes the accessibility side a little bit easier. Then you come on to the worlds. Now, the worlds, again, are similar in some respects in terms of the view, in terms of moving around, but different at the same time. So Shenmue's world is built on detail, and that is across all 3 games, in fairness. Shenmue 1's detail is probably still unrivaled today in terms of the objects you can pick up, the characters you can speak to, the NPCs, all of that sort of thing, and the music as well, which is fantastically put together. You have all the free music when you're roaming the world of Dobuita. Again, in Shenmue 2, we go to Hong Kong, Kowloon, Guilin, and even in Shenmue 3, you've got all the free music, sort of setting the scene, setting the tone for things that are going on while talking to the NPCs, while interacting with the world, while engaging with the world and being a part of that world. Now, the Like a Dragon world is very well, very, very well presented, especially the newer iterations. Graphically look impressive. Has a real sort of hustle and bustle feel about it, absolutely. But they're a lot less interactive. Now, that is a design choice. That's something they've chose to do deliberately. But what it means is you don't get that level of feeling as part of the world as you would do in a Shenmue game. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But it's a different presentation, different perspective. But what it does then mean that Like a Dragon has to do is find its substance elsewhere. And what it does find its substance in is some of the fighting that it does and all the mini games that they do. Now, Shenmue and Like a Dragon, Yakuza borrow mini games. They obviously have the Sega arcade games, which, if you took Yakuza 0, you've got Outrun in there. I think you've got Space Harrier in there as well, which makes sense considering obviously Shenmue, same time, you've got those games kicking around as well, which is fantastic. So clearly borrowed those. Obviously later Like a Dragon titles have like Virtua Fighter 3 in them. They've had like other iterations of Virtua Fighter, Sonic Fighters, all sorts of games in there from the Sega arcade days, which is fantastic as well. But what I think Like a Dragon has invested in a little bit more than Shenmue, certainly in some respects, is that the breadth and the amount of mini games that are in there are very, very different. Shenmue's mini games sort of coincide with the world. They coincide with what the player is trying to achieve at the time. So when you think of the forklift job, that is a mini game. Okay, you're tied into it. Can be a bit annoying, but you can see where I'm going with that. Obviously, you've got the arcade games, which are mini games. And then, obviously, in Shenmue 2, you've got the crate carrying, which is a mini game to earn money. Lucky Hit, which is a game to earn money. The gambling to earn money as well. Then in Shenmue 3, you've got a few more sort of mini games in now. Obviously, you've got Lucky Hit. You've got Pail Toss. You've got the turtle racing, frog racing, and some other bits besides as well. But it's all very much geared towards the economy, and then you've got toy capsules and things you can sort of spend your money on, and they don't really have an impact on Ryo's abilities, gameplay, or anything like that. But they're there as part of the economy, they're there as part of a sort of an evolving world as you move on. Like a Dragon, I think, doesn't integrate it so much within the world, but impacts the character of Kazuma Kiryu or Ichiban, whoever you're playing as, a bit more directly. So in some of the mini games, you get power-ups, which obviously impact your fighting, for example, and I'll talk about the fighting engines in a bit. You also get sort of the mini kart races that you get the drone racing, you get a crazy taxi mini game, you get can carrying mini game, you get food delivery mini games. The breadth of mini games in Like a Dragon Yakuza is vast. It's massive. So it gives the player lots of things to engage with outside of the world. So even though the world on the sort of superficial level is quite empty, and I'd use the term empty in the best possible sense, and it's well presented, lots of hustle and bustle, but it doesn't have the interactivity of the Shenmue world, there's more to do in it potentially, or at least in some people's eyes I can see where that argument comes from. Whereas Shenmue gets its world and interactivity from the characters, from the places you visit, from the items that you pick up, from the people that you meet, and from the training you do for the martial arts as well. So it's a very different perception of lots of mini games that interact with the world and have a direct impact on your fighting ability and some of your character statistics, Whereas the Shenmue games, barring 3 a little bit, where obviously you have the martial arts training, boost your health, boost your attack power, very basic way of doing it, it's very more around the economy and the story as well. So it sort of sets a little bit of a different tone there. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But each to their own, I guess. But they are polar opposites in terms of how they implement those particular examples around minigames. Then we come on to sort of the fighting aspect of it here. Now, Shenmue obviously is a martial arts epic. Ryo's learning moves, he's learning all about himself, he's learning about to keep a mind clear as polished mirror, all that sort of stuff. So it's a journey for him. And as such, the fighting in Shenmue is presented as, they are far and few between when compared to the Like a Dragon series, and that makes sense. But the fighting has quite a reasonable amount of stakes around it. Normally it's tied to a story event. Normally it's tied to an event or something that is going to have an impact later on in the game that you refer back to. Whereas in Like a Dragon, obviously you have the fights within the story elements, which is very Shenmue. But you also have these random encounters as well, that you move around the world. You have a random encounter, fight some people off, be it either in turn-based through Infinite Wealth or Like a Dragon 7, for example. Or you have the free fighting system of the previous games, or Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, or the Judgment series as well, which has that free fighting engine. So that side of it, in terms of how they presented the engine, that you have free fighting for the most part. But the Like a Dragon engine lends itself, I think, to more casual players in that it's probably easier to pick up, easier to master, and easier, I think, to get some satisfaction out of some of the moves that you can do. It's also much more in depth in terms of the weapons that you can use, the interactivity with the world, etc. It's very much ingrained in how that fighting engine presents itself, and it's very, very over the top. You see people get smashed over there with motorbikes, coned. You see like big flashes of light when you're attacking people. It's quite bloody in terms of, again, the way it presents itself when people are getting punched in the face and everything else. So the presentation of it is very, very different. It's very over the top. Very in your face. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but the presentation, the fighting itself is very different. Take away the random encounters for just a second. Whereas Shenmue, it doesn't show any of that. It's very much grounded in the fighting engine. It's very grounded, like its story, it's very grounded as well in the way it presents itself and the fights that you have, when you have them and why you have them. It's much more grounded. There's not too many opportunities for external fights for the story. Certainly Shenmue 1, you get the odd few with Anarchy, for example. You get a few of those that are optional. Shenmue 2, again, you can come across a few more through some of the sort of the fighting arenas that you pick up. And obviously in Shenmue 3, they lent a bit more into that idea with having the dojo system that you fight your way through, etc. as well. And I do wonder, and this is something I'm going to pick up on later perhaps, whether Shenmue could learn something from Yakuza and the fighting and how it presents itself. But with Yakuza Like a Dragon, sometimes you want a balance, and the fighting in terms of the balance is that you get these random encounters all the time. So for some players, and I find this, and having played all the games through back to back, cover to cover, it can be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit annoying when you're trying to move from A to B within the world, even if you're not trying to progress the story but you want to go to an arcade or wherever. You get random encounters. You don't want them necessarily, which is then very interesting. After 7-8 iterations of this game now, Sega have gone, all right, we'll introduce a skip function, which is now in Infinite Wealth, which means it carries a trade-off. You don't get as much experience, but it means you can progress through the world a little bit quicker and have that added balance within it, which obviously Shenmue doesn't have that volume of fighting, so therefore it doesn't need it. And then I'm going to come on to sort of, I guess, the stories in a bit more detail as well. Shenmue's story is grounded. It's very, very grounded. As I said earlier, it's very much grounded in Ryo's journey, the people he meets, etc. Whereas the Like a Dragon stories are a bit more over the top, but the way they present themselves, they go off on their own tangents, and that is absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with that, and I really don't see why people are trying to completely loggerheads between the two series, because it doesn't benefit anybody. And I'm coming on to sort of, I guess, the summing up part of this video, I guess, now. Both series are absolutely fantastic, and I maintain that any Shenmue fan would get something out of the Like a Dragon Yakuza series. I promise you will. Likewise, I think any Yakuza Like a Dragon fan, if they gave Shenmue the time, would get something out of it. Now, personal preferences come into that. That is absolutely fine. But I don't want to overplay a rivalry here, or even try to stoke one, because I really don't think there should be. But as I said at the top of the video, I get that from a Shenmue fan perspective, it does look like and feel like at times that Sega have almost left us behind and gone, well, we've got Yakuza Like a Dragon now, and that stokes a bit of discontent, and I at times feel that as well, but I don't want to stoke that. And the reason being is very, very simple, that we should be helping each other as these communities. Remember, years and years ago, Like a Dragon was struggling in the West. They weren't going to bring 5 West. It took a campaign. Obviously, in terms of the building the list, Shenmue was number 1. Yakuza 5 was number 2. And I guarantee you that a lot of those people that were campaigning in terms of the Yakuza series in the West were probably Shenmue fans as well. So Shenmue fans, most likely, lent into the Yakuza series and help get it West and help keep that series moving. And that's exactly what we should be doing for each other. We should help each other. The chances are we're fans of the same games. We're fans of the same genres. Why can't we help each other and unite in our voices to get more of what we both want? I don't get that. Why are we stoking sort of an artificial rivalry that I really don't think benefits anybody? At the end of the day, we got both games. We got Yakuza 5 came west. Obviously, Yakuza went and flew after Zero, did really well. And Shenmue 3 made it. Take what you think about that, it's up to you. But Shenmue 3 happened. We got the anime, we got the re-releases as well. So there were successes on both sides there. So why not unite and learn from each other a little bit? And why can't people enjoy both? As I say, Shenmue's a break from the madness of Yakuza Like a Dragon. It's much more grounded, it's much slower in how it presents itself, and it really leans into the world, the music, the atmospherics, whereas Like a Dragon has the world, but leans into, A, it's very good storytelling, and B, all the other things, the side quests and the presentation that it has for them as well. But it is a quick hit when compared to Shenmue. Both games have relative strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, some people will accuse Shenmue of being slow, boring, and doesn't have enough action in it. Other people will say that Like a Dragon is overwhelmed with all the random encounters, all the mini games, etc., and it becomes a little bit too much. And I can see both sides of that argument. But why can't games learn from each other's strengths? Now, I am going to say this on record, I've said this many times, that Yakuza doesn't exist without Shenmue and the hard work that it's been put into place. And one thing that I am going to make a point of saying is actually I think the Yakuza fan base maybe don't all recognise it. The older fans probably do, but I think some of the newer fans who've come across it for the first time maybe don't know the history of the people that worked on it and just see it for what it is. And actually, if they dove into it a little bit, would understand whether you like Shenmue or not. Without it, you don't get, or certainly don't get as quickly as they did the Yakuza series as it is to this day. And even now, it still isn't doing some of the things that Shenmue does. But likewise, Shenmue can learn from the Like a Dragon series. So when I take the fights as an example, random encounters can be quite overwhelming. I've said this many times. Why not in Shenmue could you not have further options within the game itself? Obviously in Shenmue 3 you've got the dojo system. Why can't you have fighting tournaments that you can enter? Why can't you have secret fights that you can find through entering these tournaments? So what you end up doing is having this little side section set around the fighting system, around that engine, so that the player can have that action orientated thing when they want it, that hit as they want it, but it's less in your face than the Yakuza Like a Dragon series. And if you build that in and build it in correctly, the difficulty scales up as Ryo trains and gets better as well, and you find secret fights, characters that you may not see, all those sort of little hidden aspects that Shenmue does very, very well. I think you could find a balance. That is just one example where I think Shenmue could learn from the Like a Dragon series of going, right, this is action orientated, it's done really, really well, but how do we balance that in with the soul and the feel of a Shenmue game? It's a fine balance, and you don't want to lose the soul. But I really do think, be it RGG, another publisher external of Sega, can help WiseNet find that balance and find that way forward that we can then get a really good action-packed Shenmue game that maybe borrows just a little bit from the Yakuza Like a Dragon series, which has seen a deserved level of success after many, many years of pushing and pushing and pushing. And I do wish Shenmue would have had that opportunity. I'm not bitter about it. It's the way things have gone. We shouldn't settle on that, but what we should settle on is how we can learn from each other, from these games, and push forward to a better Shenmue 4, better Shenmue 5, and hopefully a better Shenmue series overall to what... Yeah, I'm not saying the Shenmue series isn't great. It's fantastic, but you can always improve and you can always look and self-reflect. Anyway, guys, it's fine balance between the two, and I'd love to hear your comments. So drop us a line below. I might pick some up as a reaction video to something like this, because I know this is a Very, very divisive subject. Don't forget, for £2 a month, you can sign up to be a member. You get all videos ahead of time outside the podcast. Any of the money goes to the running costs from the site, and nothing is locked behind a paywall. It just goes to a normal schedule if you don't sign up, and that's absolutely fine. Don't forget to give us a like, share, subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and all the usual places. And I'll be back with a video in the not too distant future. But for now, guys, take care. Have a good one.